Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of Rendezvous with the Stalwarts, the show where we discuss the journey of stalwarts in our profession and talk with them about their experiences, projects, and their vision for the future of our industry. I am Daniel Couture, your host for the show, and in today's episode, it is truly a pleasure to be talking to Najwa Jawahar. Najwa is an award winning chartered structural engineer with over 9 years of experience working at WSP. She has had the opportunity to work on some challenging and exciting projects with experience in residential and commercial domains. She desires to leave her mark on the cities around the world by working on engineering challenges at all scales and make a true contribution to the community around her as an engineer, as a mentor, and as a role model. So, without any further ado, let's move straight into our conversation with Najwa Jawahar. Welcome, Najwa, in today's episode of Rendezvous with the Stalwarts. Thank you so much for carving out time for the show today.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me over, and I'm really excited to share my journey and share my learnings and lessons to
Yeah,
in my engineering career. Thank you.
yeah, I'm truly looking forward to our conversation today on the show. So, Nazwa, I'd like to know more about what it was that inspired you during your schooling years to pursue civil engineering as a profession with a specialization in structural engineering.
Right, very interesting question, and I don't know if this is a very normal question answer you would get for this question. I actually, growing up, did not want to be an engineer. I actually wanted to be a lot of other things. So growing up, I wanted to be a teacher, a photographer, a writer, a novelist, but I never thought it was an engineer. So from a very young age, I had a lot of interest in maths and physics, and
Okay.
these two subjects always just made sense to me. They were just absolutely clear. So when I moved to UK in 2004, I chose maths, chemistry, and physics for my A level subjects. And during my A levels, I sat down with my physics teacher, and I still remember that feeling that because I didn't know what I wanted, so he wrote down a very long list of careers for me. And on that list, he wrote down every type of engineering. And I still remember my expression to him. I looked at him and I said, why engineering? Why me? Because I had that perception of an engineer being a male. I had that perception of engineering, an engineer being someone who's going to be dealing with mess, grease, construction. So I actually questioned that. But he wrote down the list and he let me select my option. And
Okay.
what I did was, instead of saying, yes, this is what I want to do, I used the method of elimination. I told him exactly why I don't want to do that specific type of engineering. I still remember saying I don't want to do electrical because I don't want to deal with the cables. I absolutely hate wiring and all that. I remember telling him I don't want to do mechanical because it's very greasy. So I don't see myself doing that. But when
Yeah.
I got to structural engineering, I absolutely did not have a reason to reject it. So I ended up becoming a structural engineer.
Quite interesting.
um, yeah. So and from that, because I chose structural engineering, I chose the degree of civil and structural engineering, and I went ahead and I applied to University of Leeds in a
Okay.
master's program. Halfway through my course, after 2 years, sorry, it was a 4 year program. So after 2 years, I went for a summer placement in Jacobs Engineering. And
Okay.
during that placement, I worked on Leeds Arena roof. So working through the design process and that summer placement, that experience actually made me realize how much I love designing. And the bigger thing was how much I love justifying my design through
Okay.
numbers. The
Yes.
numbers were like, okay, the numbers gave me that confidence that what I'm proposing is right. And that's why when I went back to university to do my last 2 years, I chose the design projects as my key focus, and then I
Okay.
completed my engineering degree. So, to long story short, my passion for engineering did not come from playing with the Lego, like what you would hear a lot of people say,
Yeah, yeah.
or wanting to be an engineer. It was
Ye-
a process of elimination.
Yes,
But
yes.
my passion was kindled through that summer placement, and I absolutely I think I don't regret my decision, but I actually love doing designing.
Yeah. That's quite an interesting story behind your decision to choose structural engineering. So by eliminating all the professions that you don't want to pursue.
Yeah. What I realize is a lot of young people don't know what they want to do, and
Yes.
they find it difficult to make that decision. And I think they should just go with the flow and try things. I
Yes, yes.
absolutely recommend doing summer placements. I absolutely recommend them to go and test a few things. If you don't like it, then drop it. But
Yeah, yeah.
or or do what I did. Just know what you don't like. Just go with the
Yeah.
flow with what you can't reject.
Yes, 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 totally, totally.
Great.
So, so you completed your bachelor's and master's of engineering in civil and structural from the University of Leeds, like which was not located far away from your family in Bradford. But after your graduation, you chose to move to London. Like, were there any particular reasons or motivations behind your decision to move to London?
Um, when I there's a story behind this as well.
Yeah.
So when I moved to UK, I was
Okay.
16, so I did my A levels. At that point, I could not speak English. I was already learning the different lifestyle, different culture, juggling with the A level pressures, then going into further education. So it was 3 years since I've been in the country. So I wasn't willing to just leave my family and then move away
Yes. Yes.
to
Yes.
a different city at that time. So it was my personal preference, and that's
Yes.
why I applied to universities which were very close, commutable distance to my home. So
Yeah.
the one I
Yeah.
applied to were Bradford, Leeds, and Sheffield. So in my own head at that time, it was the commuting distance which controlled my decision. So I didn't want to stay at home, so I didn't go to
Yes.
Bradford, but I didn't
Yes.
want to be going too far either, so I didn't go
Yeah.
too far to any other city, so I went to Leeds instead. But another thing I did look at was when I chose the universities around my house, I did look at the course they were offering and the modules I was going to choose to go
Okay.
ahead and focus on my career. Basically, I made sure it's a university which has really good education that will become a base for rest of my
Yes.
career.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's one reason. Um, but when I completed my degree, it
Okay.
was an unfortunate period. So the market was still struggling because of the recession, and it was just coming out of it. So I was graduated in 2011.
Okay.
Um, and once I graduated, I really struggled to find a job. I tried for constantly for 7 months, and I was rejected by over 250 companies. I literally applied everywhere. And when I was about to give up in engineering and then start applying to other professions, um, I got a lucky message on LinkedIn. So during that period, because I was doing job hunting, I was also learning about LinkedIn
Yes.
and developing my personal brand, meeting people, networking. So I
Okay.
was very active. That's why. So when I received a message on LinkedIn from an engineer who was at that time working in WSP in their London office,
Okay.
um, I took that opportunity, even though it wasn't something that was in my mind because I didn't want to leave home. But I still took
Yes.
that option to start my career at one point. And that decision to move to London was that reason that I struggled to find the job up north, and I moved towards the big city.
Okay.
Um, and I went for that interview, got the job, and started working as a graduate engineer in the London office. After joining the company, I started working on tall buildings, all different residential, commercial sectors, and that's when I developed my passion for wanting to change the skylines of different cities. So that's when I realized, okay, I want to make a difference to the
Okay.
environment around me. And I was absolutely impressed by, I mean, like everyone is, by London
Yeah.
City itself.
Yes. Yes.
So it basically developed my passion into that next level. And that's why I stayed there for a good few years before I moved back.
Okay. Okay. Nazwa, how have you managed to upskill yourself professionally constantly and gain all the success during the past 9 years of your career? Like right after starting to work in this profession, like, could you share a couple of your practices or philosophies which young engineers should keep in mind in order to have a successful career in our profession?
Mhm. Yeah, I absolutely love this question because that's something I feel everyone should really focus on.
Yes,
For
yes.
me, life is all about constantly learning and learning something new and upskilling yourself. So since graduation, I have developed a lot of skills. I've constantly been learning. Engineering is one sector where
Yeah.
there's always something new to do.
Yes. Yes.
It might not be at a massive scale. It might be a very
Yes.
small thing, but it's
Yeah.
always new. And
Yes.
but the two things I really want graduates and the young engineers to focus on is one, don't just focus on your technical skills. Look at more than just your technical skills. What I mean here is think about your softer skills, right? How do you present
Yes.
yourself? Think about networking, your presentation skills, your brand development, commercial understanding, and the project management. Understand how the industry works, right?
Yes.
Because technical to be able to do the maths and physics and do the numbers and crunching the numbers behind the screen is easy,
Yes.
but to be
Yes.
able to deliver that concept to the wider team, to communicate that with the client, to go and develop yourself, get recognized as an engineer, is another thing that you need to keep in mind.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
I learned a lot of these skills through my extracurriculars and in my early career, in my early years.
Okay.
So I set up a young engineers network within the first year when I started 2012. And that helped me develop a network that helped me build that confidence. And then I joined WSP's task force, which helped me develop those business skills and understanding of building relationships and how do you develop and deliver ideas and business cases. And I also hosted and delivered a few institutional events for different institutions, which
Okay.
again focused on the networks, focused on how do you approach people you don't know,
Yeah.
so that you can sell your concept to them and then convince them to come and present. So be hosting and delivering events is a lot about to be able to speak to someone and then convince them to bring them to your cause and speak
Yes.
about it. And that
Yeah.
is a very difficult skill if you think about it. So I
Yes.
learned
Yes.
that through the organization. And again, organization and management is another one of them. So combine all of these together, it gave me a confidence. It helped me focus on myself. It gave me self confidence, and it gave me that boost that I can be a good engineer. So to
Yes.
become a good engineer, you don't just need to focus on the technical aspects, you also need to focus on yourself.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and the second thing I would like the young engineers and graduates to focus on is never hesitate to ask a question, no matter how stupid you think that question is. Please just go ahead and ask, because that way you're tapping into the experience and knowledge of those who have been in the industry for a lot longer than you have. And what you don't
Yes.
realize is when you talk about your ideas, you double check your concepts, you're basically understand their point of view, and also you avoid making a very costly mistake, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Believe it or not, engineering is a very risky industry. And why I say that is because a small mistake we can make in the design, in numbers, can actually cost a human life. And that's why it's
Yes.
very important to just go and ask a question. It's easy. You might feel weird for one or two times, but then
Yeah.
you will
Yeah.
get over it. I still do that. So just keep doing it.
Yes. Yes. Those are two great points that you mentioned to like create a personal brand for yourself and upskill not just technically but your social skills as well. And the next way important point that you mentioned of asking questions in your early years so that you have a very strong foundation right from the start.
Yes.
So, Nazwa, which has been the most fascinating structure for you from around the world from a structural engineering design point of view, and why do you find it fascinating?
I would say I don't think I have a favorite building. I don't say I have a favorite structure because I feel every structure tells you a different story. It has a different
Yes,
challenge. And like for example, I'm going to use two very architecturally driven designs
yes,
and
sure.
tell you the comparison of why I like them. So
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
them is Antoni Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. It's a Roman Catholic church in Barcelona, and the reason I absolutely love this is because of its structural form, right? So the shapes and the form expresses the architecture, but it's also defining the load parts, right?
yes,
You're using the catenary curves to help achieve the fascinating spans and complement the architecture. I think that makes it a really, really beautiful and structurally amazing project. And
yes,
a complete contrast of this is Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, which is a 2.5-acre park in the sky with a 150 meter long infinity pool. And
yes,
it's an incredible cantilever. It's completely different from Sagrada Familia because it's modern architecture, it's modern challenges, it's a tall building, and it's iconic and it's worth admiring. Um,
yes, yes.
and I often look at these buildings, like let's take Burj Khalifa for an example, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
absolutely stunning, really tall building, modern structure. But I, what people don't realize is the taller you go, the more challenge you actually have in the ground.
yes, yes,
So it might look fascinating from outside, but what's even more incredible is how it's standing up. It's just beautiful. It's complex and it's beautiful. Um, and that's why I admire these buildings. And like I said, every building is different. Every building has
yeah,
a challenge. I mean, when I speak about my own projects, you will see why I like them.
yes, yes, yes. Those two are definitely engineering marvels for sure. That brings us to the end of our conversation for part one. In the second part, we'll be discussing with Nazwa about her projects and some of her interesting insights about our profession. See you all in the second part of our conversation with Nazwa.
Thank you.